Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the budget at USI. We're not going to lie, there's a lot of math, so we can jazz this up only a bit, including an appearance from the cast of The Bear. We'll start off by saying that currently USI is in the red. Based on what the board's proof for all expenses we could find in the board materials, the amount of a deficit compared to ADA from Leandra stands between $1,251,632 and $1,284,632. Looking only at recurring expenses for USI reveals yearly deficits of over $722,000 or more. If you're interested in how we arrived at these figures, then stick around and we'll explain. We'll also examine ongoing costs without one-time expenses to be transparent as possible. You'll see that USI will continue to lose money and increasing enrollment will only make it lose more. First, USI draws no ADA money. Parkview School, formerly the district's home school, which Chernus and the board majority now refer to as independent study, draws the ADA that goes to USI. USI is a pathway, or program, just like the other district pathways like DMAA at El Dorado or MSA at Esperanza. If you don't want to take our word for it, then there's this.
Why do we create a pathway through our independent study program called USI?
These programs do not generate ADA, schools do. According to Leandra's inaccurate chart, Parkview draws $1,854,900 in ADA, or income, from 150 students. Presently, the district has approved spending for USI in the amount of $3,116,583. Here's a breakdown for these costs. The training lab has received $1,228,537. Construction and construction testing fees total $466,453. DSA fees, $6,352. Architect and engineering fees, $70,500. Maintenance, $9,786. Equipment, $7,346. Artificial turf, $114,863. $700 to home campus athletic for clearance at USI. $52,000 approved by the board to access human potential. $136,000 to BC Adaptive Fitness. And $285,000 approved by the board to Recode Fitness. This totals $3,106,532. However, Leandra's cost for accessing human potential is $30,000, Recode Fitness is $300,000, and BC Adaptive Fitness is $176,000. Her numbers, which are really Alex's numbers, come out to $33,000 more than what the board approved. Where these numbers come from is a mystery. However, using Leandra's numbers, the total expenditure is now $3,139,532. If we use the more conservative expenses of $3,106,532 and subtract the $1,235,000 received from projected ADA, we come up with a deficit of roughly $1,251,632. If we use Leandra's numbers, then the deficit increases to just over $1,284,632. Again, this includes one-time expenses, and for those saying that's not how it works, well, we offer you this. Imagine we're opening a new restaurant, like starting a new district program. Restaurants are expensive and have narrow profit margins. You've got to spend money up front, often by borrowing, which is money going out, or expenses. Then when the restaurant opens, we manage costs, bring in as many customers as we can, and hope the restaurant eventually turns a profit. Just ask Chef Sydney from The Bear.
How's my budget looking?
Oh, what was that, Chef? Did you say, how's my budget?
We have equipment that works. That's a great start, everybody. 0. Drywall, insulation. Fryer is, that's $5K right there.
Fryer, and then another 10 for the correct fryer, and the oven is scary. That's another 10.
Okay. Then we got the windows, the demos.
Plus
70K,
30,
that's not bad.
80K.
Really?
Permits, the inspections, and the licenses.
Right, okay, that's
Right about that.
10K, 10K
Smart
plus
thinking,
70K. So we're at 80.
90. See,
Yes.
HVAC?
So we are at 85. Haha, no, just kidding. 95.
This is before they open and any diners bring money in, also known as income. Right, Todd? How can this be? Did you hear all those expenses? Ovens, fryers, HVAC? Those are all one-time expenses, yet they're part of the budget. In fact, when they realize what they budgeted for startup costs, and some people have claimed we don't know anything about business, isn't enough, they've got to borrow $500,000 more from Uncle Jimmy. Great scene, by the way.
Not only are you not giving me back the original $300,000 you owe me, but you are also asking me for an additional $500,000.
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay. And so,
More expenses added to their budget, which will come due, whether from turning future profits or selling your restaurant and the land. Expenses, part of a budget. As of right now, USI, paid with income from Parkview, isn't running in the black like Alex, Leandra, and the rest of the board majority want us to believe. Let's be generous and remove those one-time expenses to examine just the recurring costs Leandra discussed online, and we'll use Leandra's numbers. The ADA Leandra sites is $12,366 per student. Since Parkview is the source of the ADA, and the purpose of Parkview, like any school, is to educate kids, let's look at education expenses first. We're not even covering all the expenses like maintenance, facilities, and insurance. We'll just analyze staffing costs, district administrative fees, and curriculum and supplies. The education costs for Parkview are probably even higher than our conservative estimates. First, we calculated the reported Parkview teachers, and not those assigned to Buena Vista Virtual Academy, BVVA. The most recent numbers for salary and benefits available are from the calendar year 2023. Employees received a 4% raise in 2023-24 and a 2% raise this school year. The retroactive increases from 2023 were not paid until 2024. So, we increased 2023 base pay by 6% for this school year, which is also likely lower than actual numbers, and omitted any step increases or extra pay employees may have received because that wouldn't be recurring. We kept benefit amounts the same as 2023, even though they likely could be higher. Also, the clerical staff, including the principal, secretary, counselor, and clerk, are split between Parkview and BVVA. So we only counted half of their salaries and benefits towards expenses at Parkview. Teachers aren't split, so their full salaries and benefits apply. Total estimated salary and benefit expenses for Parkview are $1,430,410. There are around 180 students at Parkview. Not all are enrolled at USI. So the cost per student for salary and benefits is $7,947. Then there are costs that contribute to the district itself to run the programs. We conservatively estimate B's to be around $500. For example, OCSCS is higher, so we decided to round down and give the district a benefit of the doubt. Then there's costs for curriculum, equipment, materials, and supplies. A conservative estimate for all these expenses is around $500. Again, it is likely higher, but we're giving the district the benefit of the doubt. By adding up the expenses for staff salary and benefits, administrative fees, and curriculum, we come to a total of $8,947 per student. Here's the thing. We know the costs are higher, but we cannot actually obtain the rest of the costs. If we subtract from the $12,366.88 provided by Leandra, that leaves a net of $3,419. Except, we haven't factored in the training costs associated with USI yet. If we now take the $8,233 Leandra provided for the cost of training and subtract that from the remaining $3,419, we're left with a net loss of $4,814 per student. If we take the 150 students claimed to be enrolled in USI, that total loss becomes $722,059. This would be per year, and as a reminder, we haven't factored in all the expenses associated just with Parkview, so actual losses are likely higher. So we can just add more students like Todd, have we mentioned he's an accountant, suggested during the May special board meeting for the train lab.
Well, but if Parkview student enrollment goes up, that means Parkview ADA goes up, which means Parkview ADA pays for the teachers and the trainers and the coaches that are going to be running USI, which is why it's completely different than Delta, than any of these other programs that are coming out, which is why it's unique.
Guess what? The more students you add, the more loss increases because ADA doesn't cover all the expenses. For example, if USI were to enroll 200 students, the deficit would go from $722,059 to $962,745 every year. By adding students to USI, the district loses more money. But do you really think Alex and the majority is going to abandon their precious? Of course not. So what happens now? That's right. They're going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul by taking money meant to go somewhere else. Alex already did this by diverting developer fees already approved for the Valencia kitchen to fund USI.
Have we moved any money in developer fees from that November projection into this project?
I don't believe so, not yet. We have
Besides the chart?
moved money, what do you mean by?
Well, like had it designated for like Valencia kitchen, for example, and then now we have decided to go this route.
Well, we haven't moved any money.
If this is voted on, then we have to shift that budget.
No, we won't. The budget is the budget.
And
We can agendize other projects at a different meeting and talk
and
about how we can fund them.
Valencia Kitchen was on there. Is that still the plan?
We can still look at funding for that. Like I said, developer fees, we get
We could,
revenues.
or, I mean, that was what was planned in November.
Well, the board never approved any expenditure for it. Yeah.
Well, that was the conversation, and that was the expectation, that we were gonna be working on a kitchen at Valencia High School that's been needed for years.
Well, we're happy, like I said, we're happy
So
to
that's on the
agendize
table.
that. Absolutely not on the table.
I don't think.
It's just not agendized today.
Okay, I'd like that agendized.
They also did this with the Innovation Lab at OCSCS when they took money from music education and early education to pay for it.
Oh, in February, thank you. So I compared the two budgets, and I noticed that the new budget, as of February 23rd, had a brand new line item on it. And the line item is for Bernarda Yorba Innovations Labs for the 24-25 school year for $1 million. So this $154,000 is just the first payment for this. Also, I noticed that upgrade in classroom technology to support music education at secondary schools was down $900,000. Early education expansion down $440,000, and miscellaneous instructions up $630,000 are just a few of the highlights.
But we're attracting new students from outside the district, they say. How many? Because the majority of students at USI are from within the district, which means they aren't new sources of revenue. The revenue is just moving from one school to another. And when it moves to USI, the district, in other words, taxpayers, lose over $3,400 per student. Of course, Alex and Leandra love to cite his $14 billion budget experience and point out that BDDA and El Camino lose money, but it's not a fair comparison. Those are both schools, not programs. In fact, El Camino, a continuation school, is mandated by law in Education Code sections 48.430 to 48.438, which people like Alex, Leandra, Sean, and Todd know, or should know. You know another program that loses money? Special education, which costs far more than any district receives. But districts are legally required to provide special education, in case you were wondering what the U.S. Department of Education does. And no one can credibly argue that we should get rid of special education. And the only evidence provided so far that BVDA and El Camino are losing money is Chernus saying it at board meetings. And he said other things at board meetings that were untrue, such as not meeting but still having DSA approval for the site at Casa Loma, which was proven false at the last board meeting.
I've spoken to this board before about trust. My grandfather used to say, never trust someone who let you down more than twice. Once was a warning. Twice, a lesson. Third time was taking advantage. Following the April board meeting, our superintendent where he stated, "My door is always open," I approached him and asked if we could talk. I was told, "Sure, just send me an email." Despite skeptics who told me that meeting would never take place, I trusted him. So I sent him that email. Getting no response, I sent a second, and then a third. Finally, he responded by stating that he couldn't possibly meet with me until after graduation. That was 2 months ago. I'm still waiting. Warning. At the May 7th board meeting, the superintendent approached me regarding my conversations with the Department of State Architects. He insisted that he had a letter from the DSA indicating that the USI project was exempt. I shared with him that I was told the DSA had not issued such a letter, but he stated he would forward me a copy of that letter. I'm still waiting for that correspondence. It turns out, based on a public records request by a member of the community, that such a letter never existed. No, a copy of DSA publication IRA 22 does not amount to an exemption letter. Excuse me. Lesson. Finally, we have heard the protestations that the USI was not even subject to review for various and ever-changing reasons. Our superintendent even went so far as accusing the wrong board member of reaching out to the DSA, calling her actions, quote, unconscionable, and further calling for a select group of community members to, quote, make everyone they know aware of her actions. As we now all know, the USI did in fact need DSA approval, and since their involvement, they have noted several safety concerns and accessibility issues that would have gone unaddressed if someone had not undertaken such an unconscionable action.
So, if he's already lied about some claims of USI, why should we believe him when he makes other claims? USI is a program that's hemorrhaging money, and at this rate, adding more students means we, the taxpayers, lose more money, and students not in USI will have to face cuts to help subsidize the select few at USI. So yes, there are programs that lose money, but some of them are required by law, and others are luxuries. However, a district isn't required to offer subsidized high-end gym memberships to kids for free, which is why other districts partner with outside gyms, because they know these programs will siphon money from somewhere else. Marilyn Anderson has brought this fact up numerous times and either has been stonewalled.
I just want to be clear that El Rancho pays the students that go to that sports training center pay $580 a month directly to them. The Fullerton Sports Institute through Delta is $10,000 annual fee per the school year for the 10-month program. So nobody else offers this. I mean, just the
It's not a good thing. Why do you want to charge our families?
because you're saying it can be paid for through ADA.
Or outright condescended to.
Because I keep wondering where the budget is for USI, and you keep saying it's a program at Parkview and part of their budget, yet Dr. Holloway is assigned to Ed Services, and so are these supervisors. So where is the budget for this?
So this is part of staffing, just like every other site. And like I've said several times before, we haven't come out and shared budgets for every school site. We'd be happy to do that. We'd need a study session to do that. But just because you're not in favor of this program doesn't mean we're going to treat it differently than every other program we have in the district.
Okay.
And your questions consistently are about the computer science school and USI.
They sound cool and fancy and might attract some new students, but so would allowing all licensed high school seniors to test drive a Ferrari for a day. Does the board plan on buying 5 or 6 Ferraris for kids to drive around? Well, with this board, you never can be too sure. Hopefully you can now see how USI's cheerleaders aren't being completely honest about its costs. It's losing money, and adding more students will worsen those losses. We've never overseen a $14 billion budget, but we know a loser when we see it. And that's why we've said USI is unfunded spending insanity.